light here. I have to convince people to an extent how serious this is in terms of the reality of where we're at, and get into solutions, ways to be sustainable. I talk about it quite a bit on my upcoming release of Psychotropic Overload on Blu-ray. I did 3 separate commentaries that talk about, at various points, the business overall and how to approach the third commentary, especially making suggestions. But before catering is one of the, I'm going to shoot this in a couple different locations. I'm going to get into the catering aspect more of it. I did discuss a little bit in Strike TV, my special situation that I would go back and forth. I was working. You kind of have to, when I first got into WGA in 2006, when they had an orientation, they had multiple, guys who had volunteered, and this 2 women and 2 guys, I think, or it was 1 woman and 3 guys, but they were working. One was TV writer, and the other guys were feature writers. And the woman, of course, practical, made the greatest suggestion. She's like, you've got to get another gig. She got into real estate because it can take forever to get paid. And you need a lawyer, and a lot of times you have to sue. Not well known, but that's the reason whenever you read, back when there were deals to be had in Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, IndieWire, particularly Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, the ones focused more on Hollywood, per se, you would read a deal, and it would have the agent, the manager, and guess who was third? But most important, the law firm. Because you always have to, when I was on the set of Smoking Aces, when I was writing something for Joe Carnahan, I never saw him get as excited. I thought he was going to make out when his lawyer showed up on set, right? Because that's the guy who gets you the money. She suggested, real estate, get a real estate license. So when you're in these things, because people understand, you get for me as a feature guy, you get the commencement. That has to last you a while. Sometimes it only lasts a couple months, 3 months. You do the rewrite. You're waiting for the rewrite. This is a big deal. Free rewrites. Oh, can you just do this? Can you do? Now you're waiting even longer to get your rewrite payment. Now you have to go back. So that's why I always had catering in there. And it actually sometimes got me gigs. There were a lot of actors like, oh, I can't work this event. So-and-so's going to be there. You know what? I saw a lot of, I pitched Todd Black something. Right? Escape artist at Sony. I was at the premiere for Pursuit of Happiness. He was right. He didn't see me, but I was just in his office the week before, but I needed money. I was waiting on the next payment from, this other gig. And sometimes I would run across, that's how I got a gig with Joe. I was at the premiere of, I think it was Fahrenheit 9/11. He's like, what are you doing here, dude? I needed money. A year later, I was a front page Variety. So catering is a big part of it. I'm going to get into the whole thing about that. But you could just see from the catering of these events how, having worked multiple Oscars, you could just see how it was just slowly deteriorating gradually as streaming came on, getting smaller and smaller. You could see it through that. I'll get into more detail there. A lot of times, when I came to LA, that was literally one of the first jobs I had. I was working at a post house for a minute and then doing some catering. The Equestrian Center in Burbank, and then I ended up working for I can't say there's issues, but a major company that did the Oscars and a whole lot of other stuff. And you could tell where the business was going by the joke with it was like when you did a premiere, it was 3 meats and a fish. Right, it was like beef short ribs, some chicken thing, carnitas or a pork there, whatever, and then the fish, a salmon or a sea bass or whatever, 18 buffets. I mean, my God, it could be $500,000 just on the premiere alone. That was a long time ago, friends. That was 20 plus years ago. You could track it by the Oscars. I worked about 13, 14, 15 Oscars over time. The first one at the Dolby, it was called the Kodak back then. It was after the televised event, the Governor's Ball, right after. It's where they'd get the Oscars engraved by the seafood station on the other balcony. And, You know, you're talking 1,500 lobster salads, 1,500 preset, you know, antipasti platters, the dessert, 1,500 special gifts. I mean, these gifts were insane. You're talking about one year they had the little flip books, so you would see, like, you know, West Side Story, their dance, you'd flip it and you'd see scenes from West Side Story or French Connection, the car chase. One year was like a film canister that had all the nominated films. You know, it was just amazing stuff. And that just started to shrink and shrink and shrink. One year, when there was still a budget, they experimented with, like, you know, stations instead of a sit down. It was the year that Scorsese won for The Departed. That was kind of done in different stations. The station I worked at had Milano Canonero. She's the costume designer for Kubrick. And many other people. She's just a brilliant lady. I wanted to talk to her so bad. But, you know, the first year I got in the WGA, I went to the WGA Awards, and I sat at the table with Todd Field and Tom Perrotta. They were there for little children. It was only a couple days before the Oscars, which I had to work. So I was there, you know, as a WGA member, talking to, you know, to Todd and these guys. And then, you know, at the event, I walked by him in a black tie. He kind of did a double take because I was working. And sometimes that worked for me. But I mean, it started to somewhere, you know, when streaming kicked in, I would say somewhere around 2013, 2014, you just see the budgets keep shrinking and shrinking. I mean, one year we came in and the room looked like it was the VIP lounge of airport terminal or something, you know. There were no tables hardly. I mean, it was glorified tray pass. They had the seafood stations, but it was tray pass. I mean, the budget was slashed exponentially. I mean, this is the biggest night in Hollywood, arguably one of the most superficial businesses in the world, and one of this most superficial town in the world, and the biggest night, and you're telling me this is it? And it just kept shrinking and shrinking. You know, there were no gifts. There were no, no the preset 1,500. You know, it was just all different stations. Some years maybe a little better than others, but the budget was slashed at least 50% or more. On the biggest night in Hollywood, you don't think that's a bellwether? I think it is.